The stain hit first, spreading across the pale blue shirt like a bruise blooming in slow motion, coffee seeping into fabric and memory at the same time. And for a moment, the cafe went quiet in that special way where everyone pretends not to look while secretly watching everything. The single dad froze with his hands half raised, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the mess as if it had landed there to accuse him of something he'd already been carrying for years. Laughter followed, light and careless from a table nearby, the kind of laughter that doesn't know it's about to wake something dangerous and sacred at once. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength people carry when no one's looking, take a second right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this survive because you do. The cafe was warm and smelled of roasted beans and sugar, a place built for comfort, yet the man felt out of place the moment he stepped inside with his daughter's small backpack slung over one shoulder. He had chosen the corner table out of habit, back to the wall, eyes on the door the way he did everywhere now, not because he wanted trouble, but because he knew how quickly peace could turn. His daughter sat coloring quietly, her shoes dangling above the floor, trusting the world in a way he once did and had learned to guard with his whole body. He had ordered one coffee and a pastry to split, counting coins before handing them over, already calculating the rest of the week in his head. Being a single dad had taught him to measure time and money in breaths. The man who laughed wore confidence like cologne, too strong and impossible to ignore. He sat with friends who looked comfortable in their lives, expensive watches flashing when they gestured, their words sharp and bored. The laugh turned into mockery without ever forming words, a performance of superiority that didn't need explanation. The stain became a symbol in their eyes, something funny because it wasn't happening to them. The single dad felt the familiar heat rise in his chest, the instinct to swallow it, to be invisible, to protect his daughter from scenes and consequences. He reached for napkins, blotting the coffee, apologizing to no one in particular, his jaw tight as the laughter continued just a second too long. What they didn't see was the way his hands moved, efficient and precise, the way his breathing slowed instead of quickened, the way his eyes lifted and assessed the room not with anger but with clarity. Years ago, long before school lunches and bedtime stories, before court dates and empty apartments, those same hands had learned a different rhythm. He had once been trained to notice exits, distances, the weight of silence before chaos. He had learned to disappear into moments, to move when movement mattered and stillness mattered more. He had learned to protect others without needing thanks. He had learned how to be a shield, flamed. Life after service had been harder than any deployment. There were no medals for getting a child ready for school while your hands shook from memories you couldn't name. There was no briefing for standing in line at a grocery store wondering if you'd have to put something back. His daughter's mother had left when the nightmares got louder, when love needed patience she didn't have, and he didn't blame her because blame was heavy and he already carried enough. He worked nights, slept light, and learned to smile in public, so his daughter would feel normal. He chose kindness not because it was easy, but because it was the last thing that still felt like control. The laughter shifted into something sharper, a comment tossed out like bait, and though no words were quoted, the intent was clear in the way heads turned, waiting to see what the single dad would do. The cafe staff hovered, uncertain, trained to de-escalate with politeness, but unprepared for the undercurrent that hummed in the room. His daughter looked up, sensing the change, her small face searching his for reassurance. He met her eyes and smiled, a real one, steady and calm, and something in that smile made the moment heavier, like the air before a storm. He stood, not abruptly, not dramatically, but with a smoothness that felt practiced, his chair sliding back without scraping the floor. He reached for his daughter's backpack first, making sure it was secure, his body positioning itself between her and the table of laughter without appearing to do so. It was a movement that went unnoticed by most, yet those who had lived through violence felt it in their bones, the shift from passive to prepared. His posture changed, shoulders relaxed, spine aligned, eyes level. He wasn't angry, he was present. The bully's confidence wavered just a flicker as the single dad approached, not to confront, not to threaten, but to exist in the space between them. There was a gravity to him now, something earned and undeniable. The cafe seemed to breathe differently. Cups paused mid-air. Conversations softened. The man didn't raise his voice or hands. He didn't need to. His stillness carried a message older than words, a promise of control rather than chaos. The laughter died, replaced by an awkwardness that tasted like regret. In that moment, the single dad wasn't thinking about winning or losing. He was thinking about the example his daughter would remember, about the kind of strength that didn't need applause. He adjusted his stained shirt, a small gesture that felt like reclaiming dignity, and turned away, guiding his daughter back to their table. The bully's friends looked at their drinks, suddenly fascinated by the surface of the table. Their earlier bravado evaporated. The cafe staff exhaled. No scene had been made, yet something had been settled. As he sat, the weight of the years pressed down gently, not as a burden, but as proof. He wiped the table clean and handed his daughter the pastry, her smile returning, her trust intact. The stain remained, but it no longer felt like an accusation. It felt like a badge, a reminder that messes happen, and how you respond matters more than how it looks. Around them, the cafe returned to life, yet something lingered, a quiet respect, a sense that they had witnessed a kind of power rarely seen and easily misunderstood. Later, as they prepared to leave, the man paid for another coffee, not for himself, but for the table that had laughed. It wasn't an act of forgiveness meant to be noticed. It was a choice made for his own peace. Kindness, he had learned, was not weakness. It was discipline. The barista nodded, eyes soft, understanding without needing explanation. The bully never looked up, and that was fine. Closure didn't require acknowledgement. Outside, the air was cool and honest. His daughter skipped ahead, counting cracks in the sidewalk, her world safe again. He watched her, heart full and fragile, knowing he would do it all again tomorrow and the day after, knowing strength wasn't about the moves you made when everyone was watching, but the ones you made when no one was. The world would test them both, he knew that, but it would also offer moments like this, small victories that stitched him back together. As they walked, he thought about the people who had never come home, the brothers and sisters who had taught him what it meant to stand firm without becoming cruel. He carried them with him in his posture, in his choices, in the way he held his daughter's hand. The cafe incident would fade into memory, but the lesson would remain etched quietly into the way he lived. If this story has started to move something in you, if you felt that tightness in your chest that comes from recognizing real courage, stay with us a little longer. That night, after homework and dinner, after stories and soft laughter, he folded his stained shirt and set it aside, not to wash immediately, but to remember. He kissed his daughter goodnight and sat alone in the dim light, the silence no longer threatening. He didn't need validation from strangers or apologies from bullies. He had chosen the harder path and walked it with grace. In a world addicted to noise, he had answered with calm. And somewhere out there, someone who had watched him that day would remember the way strength looked without fists or fury. Someone would choose restraint over rage because they had seen it work. That was how change happened, not in grand speeches, but in small, deliberate acts. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love or a moment that changed you, please take a moment now to like the video, share it, and let us know you felt it too. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive. Before the ending, we have one special request. Comment below with the word is strength. If you believe real power is shown through self-control and kindness. The single dad never told his daughter about his past, not in detail. He didn't need to. She would learn everything she needed to know from the way he lived, from the way he chose compassion, even when mocked, from the way he stood tall without standing over anyone. And years from now, when she faced her own moments of ridicule or fear, she would remember a cafe, a stain, and the quiet way her father moved like a legend without ever needing to say who he was. The next morning arrived quietly, the way mornings often do after something heavy has passed, pretending nothing important happened while everything feels slightly rearranged. The single dad woke before his alarm, as he always did, his body trained by years of responsibility and memory. For a brief moment, he lay still, staring at the ceiling, the cafe replaying in fragments not as conflict, but as confirmation. He hadn't failed his daughter. He hadn't failed himself. He moved through the small apartment with careful steps, packing lunch, tying shoelaces, brushing hair with clumsy tenderness. His daughter talked about school, about a drawing she wanted to finish, about how the cafe pastry had been the best thing she'd eaten all week. She didn't mention the laughter or the stain, and that told him everything. Children remember safety more than scenes. She had felt protected, and that was enough. Outside, life moved fast and indifferent. Buses hissed. People rushed, the world demanding toughness without ever explaining how to survive gently inside it. He walked his daughter to school, watching her disappear through the doors with a wave that carried more trust than he deserved, yet would always honor. When she was gone, the silence returned, heavier now, filled with the shape of thoughts he rarely allowed himself to finish. He went to work, another long shift, another day of keeping his head down. His co-workers knew him as quiet, reliable, the man who never complained and always stayed late. They didn't know why he flinched at sudden noises or why he preferred corners and exits. They didn't know about deserts, about nights that stretched forever, about brothers lost and promises kept. And he was fine with that. Some stories weren't meant to be told out loud. But the cafe moment had changed something subtle inside him, not in a loud, triumphant way, but like a door cracking open. For years, he had believed survival meant shrinking, avoiding attention, enduring whatever the world threw his way as long as his daughter was safe. Now he realized survival could also mean standing without striking, existing fully without apology. That realization followed him through the day like a steady heartbeat. Later that week, he returned to the same cafe. Not to prove anything, not to look for trouble, but because fear only grows when you feed it avoidance. His daughter sat beside him again, coloring the same corner table, the same smell of coffee and warmth. This time, there was no laughter, no mockery. A few people recognized him, nodded politely. One older man even offered a smile that carried respect rather than curiosity. The bully was there too, sitting alone now. He looked smaller somehow, not weaker, just stripped of the careless armor confidence gives when it's never been tested. Their eyes met briefly. There was no confrontation, no words, just an understanding that some moments change the balance of things forever. The single dad ordered his coffee and sat, heart steady, breath slow. A woman approached their table, hesitant but sincere. She told him she'd been there that day, that she hadn't said anything but wished she had. She thanked him, not for intimidating anyone, but for showing her son, who had been with her, that strength didn't need shouting. The words caught him off guard more than the laughter ever had. Gratitude has a way of doing that. He nodded, unsure how to respond, his daughter looking up proudly as if her father had done something heroic instead of simply necessary. That night, after homework and dinner, he found himself telling his daughter a small piece of the truth. Not about combat or fear, but about choices. He told her that sometimes people try to feel bigger by making others feel small, and that the bravest thing you can do is refuse to play that game. She listened carefully, absorbing the lesson the way children do, without judgment, without complication. Then she hugged him, tight and fierce, as if sealing the lesson into both of them. Weeks passed. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Bills still arrived. Exhaustion still lingered. The past still whispered when nights grew quiet. But something had shifted in the way he carried himself. He stood straighter. He spoke when needed. He allowed himself small joys without guilt. Strength, he realized, wasn't something you turned on in emergencies. It was something you practiced daily in patience and restraint, in love. One evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, she asked him if he was a hero. The question landed softly but deeply. He smiled and told her no, that heroes were just people who tried their best when it mattered. She seemed satisfied with that answer, drifting to sleep with the certainty that her world was safe. Alone again, he sat in the quiet and thought about the unseen ripple of that cafe moment. Somewhere, someone had learned a different definition of power. Somewhere, a child had watched and remembered. Also, somewhere, a bully had been forced to confront his own emptiness. None of it would make headlines. None of it would earn applause. And that was exactly why it mattered, because real legends don't announce themselves. They don't need to. They move through ordinary places, carrying invisible weight, choosing dignity over dominance, calm over chaos. They are single parents in cafes, exhausted workers, quiet guardians of small, precious lives. And long after the stain had washed out of the shirt, long after the memory softened around the edges, the lesson remained clear and unshakable. True strength is not about how hard you hit, but how much humanity you refuse to lose when the world dares you to. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that courage can be quiet and still world-changing, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and leave a comment. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. And before you go, comment a strength below if you believe kindness and self-control are the most powerful forces we have. Because somewhere right now, a single parent is walking into a cafe, carrying more than anyone can see, and your belief might be the reminder they didn't know they needed.